Okay, so I can touch better the presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I will use plain English because this is my English, not more than that. And I will describe a bit our work in these 3 years. We start in 2014 to work in this project. Here with me, Vincenzo Agui, one of the founder of Helperbit. And as said before, Helperbit is a platform that uses permissionless blockchain technology to help people affected by catastrophic event. And the platform is designed to offer an audit of charity and also insurance economic flow. I think, okay, we can. You can manage that. Here you can see some figure related by the sources United Nations, and essentially, as an average, every year there are 100,000 people that die due to catastrophic events, natural disaster, and there are up to 200 million people that are the affected one. When this kind of event happen, everybody have a kind of empathy with this, and many times we make a donation for that, but mainly in the last years, the last decades, this is not always true, because newspaper like this show us maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years after. This is a newspaper from 2012, if I remember correct, and it's related to the earthquake of 2009. So what was happening? Essentially, people that make donation with SMS Solidali, essentially they thought that this money goes to the affected people of the earthquake, but this money goes to the, following the information that are on the newspaper, goes to the bank that use as an insurance if the earthquake, the affected people don't pay the landed money. So this is create a kind of hungriness, and people start to donate less and less. And this is Italy, but it's the same in US, in Haiti, and in other countries. What we want to do, when we discovered blockchain technology, we saw that the transparency that can offer can be applied in this environment. So what we did was to use the transparency, the efficiency, and the speed of this technology, and we merged it with an analytical, the geographical information system. And our, let's say, model, business model is a kind of freemium business model. So we want to leave part of the platform for free, and this is the peer-to-peer donation platform. And another part that is our business, main business, will be a risk-sharing system. So a smart contract that we will describe later. Also, the charity market is relevant, is interesting. You can see in this slide that there are roughly $6 billion of donation that every year are allocated from private donors, and more or less the same quantity is not donated, is an estimation, but is not donated due to lack of transparency. So there are between $6 and $8 billion that, if there was transparency, can go to people that are in needs. At the same time, we have over international body like United Nations or Europe that make their job helping, for example, Syrian refugees or drought in Central Africa. But we don't know how exactly they use this money. So we are taxpayer, maybe not everybody in this room, but we would like to see how they spend this money. And a tool like what we are building is perfect for this purpose. So let's start with the donation part. How does it work this? And here I will propose the part related to earthquake, that is our first study case. People subscribe to the platform, and the type of user can be a single user, a citizen, or an organization, or a company, or a county or municipality. Then we ask information to these different kind of people. For some, it's compulsory. For example, organization, we need to know everything about that because we have to protect the donors from scammers. And in case of single user, it's up to them. They can provide information related to identity and to position at a different level. If it's an information that is just auto-defined, like I'm Guido, I'm from Milan, the level of trust that we assign to them, it's really low. While if they start to give more information, like this is my identity card, send me at home a code that I redeem online, the level of trust that we assign to them is higher. And this it's a slider that can be selected by the donors when they want to make an advanced donation. Then we put this information in a geodatabase, that is a geographical database. At the same time, we are building another geodatabase that is based in this moment on information from USGS, United States Geological Survey, and it's related to information on the position and the magnitude of the earthquake events. At this point, people on the platform can cross this information, and if there is an event, like the last event in Iran, in Iraq 2 weeks ago, they can see in the platform who is present and decide if make a donation to an organization that work on a project on that site, or even they can decide to donate directly to the endpoint, so a single citizen that is on the other part of the world. We decided to offer a double approach, so people that have more are more keen with organization and want that the project are for a community, make donation to an organization, and others that have a more let's say libertarian and anarchic point of view, want to donate maybe a single person, avoiding all the intermediary and also avoiding us if they want. Another important tool that we are offering is the possibility to compare this event. We have analyzed that there is a relevant problem related to the media coverage. When an event happens, this event can receive more donation if there is a stronger media coverage. If there are maybe the same number of injury or dead people in two different places, you will see that if one of the two places is in the third world with a media coverage strong, they receive more money, and this is probably unfair. So the possibility to show with this tool and make a comparison with in between the different events can support a more precise and wise decision from the point of view of the donors. We have, in this case, for example, a layer of population that we intersect with the layer of the event to see how many people are supposed to be affected, and this is another good indicator to understand immediately how strong is the event. This is the advanced form for the last event in Italy. In this case, we started a collaboration with Legambiente last year, and the advanced donor can make a filter on the recipient based on different characteristics. For example, a geographic filter, they can decide to donate only on the people that is really in the center of near the epicenter, or related to the kind of users, so they can decide to put the money for the organization, for the single user, and also if they want, they can help Helper that is doing this part for free. Another important element, because we are in using blockchain, is privacy. So if you want, you can make a donation in a private way, just using a QR code, so without logging in the platform. So you preserve the distinction between your name and your wallet. Or maybe you want to show off, or you want to, in future we are working on that, make the tax deduction. So you subscribe, you log in the platform, and you use directly the platform. In this case, obviously, that specific wallet will be viewed from other people. It's up to the user to do it or not. So we are working with organization. It's not a single user on all this wallet. A good part of the wallet that we have, fortunately not now anymore, but was with just the one at the beginning, so mono-signature. But with our organization, we cannot provide a mono-signature wallet. So every time that you see an organization that have a mono-signature, it's correct to say mono-signature, yeah, mono-signature wallet, it's probably single signature wallet. It's probably a low level of security. Why? Because in the old world, you have the people entitled to manage the money, but if he tries to do something, probably there is the bank that can say something related to that. While in the crypto world, if you give a single signature wallet to the treasurer, to the people entitled to manage the money, he can go away with all the money of the organization. This cannot be possible. So we have to provide a multi-signature wallet. What we are providing as a base is a 3 out of 4, where we have a single signature and the organization has 3. This allows us to help them if they lose a key, but don't give us the possibility to touch this money. That is important also. We tomorrow there will be the official launch of the live version, and we already go with Segwit. And when you have you did the donation, what happened? You can navigate in different way with a graph, with a list, where these money are going. Organization can decide which information want to provide to the platform, and people can see what's going on behind. Here, the study case that we did this year, so a bunch of anonymous people and organization make donation in Bitcoin to Legambiente. Legambiente has a certain number of rules to redistribute the money, and what they did, essentially they asked for invoice. So people, for example, Bosco Torto are a couple of guys in Norcia that are farmer. They provide on the platform the invoice in euro of what they bought, and Legambiente verify this information and make a refund in Bitcoin with the hash of the invoice inside the same transaction. And this information can be seen on the platform. So the first part on the left, it's already done. We are working also in the second part, where also the vendors have can play a role in the platform, and so we can essentially close all the transparency mechanism, because one organization like Legambiente maybe can buy directly 110th and in Bitcoin to vendors that provide this. So here some figure related to the social impact that this project can provide. One of the most important is that we can try to untap the $6 billion of donation that at the moment are not donated, and can increase the efficiency of the procedures. Now we stop with the donation part and we pass to the insurance part, the risk-sharing system. Here, where are the problems? Some of you have already experimented a earthquake?
Yes.
Okay, so if this happen, when this happen, and there is maybe you are insured, and the first thing that you have to do is a claim to the insurance. So you start with the bureaucracy. There are deadlines that you have to provide information. You have to probably prove the damage that your house received. Sometimes your house is in the red zone, so you cannot access to this house maybe for months or years. And or maybe your house is perfect, it's completely habitable, but your community is destroyed. So you receive a social tissue damage, a collateral damage, because your family have to move to another town or to another country. These are damages that usually are not covered by classic insurance. And also another interesting thing is that you never know what the insurance does with the money that they are collecting, how they use it. The market here is interesting because there are $70 billion of damages that, as an average every year, are not covered by classic insurance, and are much more the collateral damage. So it's a market that, for us, it's interesting to investigate. And how does it work? This people that is already in Elberby that can use for free can also access to service that is a payment service. To use this smart contract, you have to pay an entrance fee. Then the entrance fee is based on the GDP of the country, so we can allow also micro insurance in third world country. And when you are inside, this is our revenue. And when you are inside as a user, you can decide how much you want to deposit in the pool of funds. Here, it's a bit simplified. In reality, the pool of funds are two. One that act immediately after each event, and one that act at the end of the smart contract period. This is because we don't know how many earthquakes, we know statistically how many are in 1 year, but we can prevent, we can't imagine how much are and which with intensity. So the first help immediately, it's based on the statistic that we elaborate of the last 40 years of event, while the second one can balance the unprecise redistribution of the first event. And the element that we are taking in consideration for the smart contract are distance from the epicenter, magnitude of the event, depth, average quality of the building, the vulnerability, that is quite important. Just imagine a magnitude 6 here in Milan or in Tokyo, it's completely different. So it's a relevant parameter that we have to take in consideration. Then 100% of this pool of funds is fully redistributed to the people that are affected. And so which one are the issues that we are dealing now that are important? Our smart contract, okay, where are the oracles of this? In this exact moment we are using USGS, but this is just the first step because it's a single information point. So if a smart guy enters USGS, modify the information, can act and put himself, I don't know, in Antarctica, can create an earthquake that goes with a smart contract in Antarctica. We are aware of this. We are already taking the API of each country, in Italy, in Djibouti, etc. This is the second step that we are working on. The third step will be with the accelerometer of a kind of Internet of Things, so the mobile phone or a specific sensor that people can put in their house. notice that we select the earthquake because from an Oracle point of view, you can make an accelerometer of this doing like that, but you cannot fake the system because the same quake must be present also at 10 kilometers of distance, so we can provide the avoidance of this kind of scam. Another issue for us is the use base. I hope that tomorrow everybody will sign up in Alphabet, so they will solve the problem. But in any case, it's important for a good smart contract that are well distributed around the world, and we are working on that also. In relation to compliance, what we are an insurance, so we have to comply with the insurance rule, or we are another things, or we are a risk-sharing system completely new based on things that is cryptocurrency, so we don't care about that. We are working on that to understand what is the best way to move. Another thing is privacy. We want to maintain high the level of privacy, and in any case give possibility to the user to decide on their own how to balance privacy, precision, and trust on the platform. Here, a screenshot of the event simulator tool. So when you want to use the smart contract, first you maybe want to see how much you receive back if some specific conditions are appear in the event. And in relation to privacy, for example, we decided to downscale the information about the lat long of the people to 100 square kilometers. So if it's enough for the earthquake analysis, but protect everybody from curiosity on who live Peter Todd or Mir, for example. And this is a group. We are 6 co-founders. Davide Gessa, that is the CTO, Vincenzo Guido, that is here, and if you want to ask some question related to security or other technical stuff, it's here. Gianluca Carbone, that represents the University of Tor Vergata, that is helping us with the index related to vulnerability and all the geographical information system. Davide Menegaldo, that like me do more or less everything, not related to coding, and Roberto Tutini, that is the CFO. And also now is working with us Rocco De Pacto as a front-end developer. This is what where we present the project, some place where we won some awards, and the blockchain space that we participate in the accelerator program. Yeah. Okay, thank you everybody. If there are questions, we are here. Please subscribe to the platform, and we are also in Twitter and blah blah blah.
I don't think microphone works, so you have to yell like me with a very powerful voice your questions. Let me try.
If you want to enter in the platform today, the HB Tour is the token to access in the private beta from alphabet.com. HB Tour. Or tomorrow it will be open.
Questions?
Systems verify that the affected user are real user and not bot or people that want money for free.
When you subscribe to the platform, you can give information to the platform related to your identity. If you say that you are Alberto, the level of trust that the platform assigns to you is 1, 2. Okay? If you start to show identity card, social link, and other things, the level of trust that the platform gives to you, it's higher. It's a kind of know your customer at levels. And when the donors make the donation, there is a slider that and based on the trust level, they can decide, I want to donate only on the people that it's 100% trust for the platform. Or I don't care, I give to also people that it's not so trusted from the platform. Okay? Ah, yeah, and we just released the code related to the wallet, to the creation of the wallet, and to the possibility to make if helper bit disappears, you can redeem your money because we released this in GitHub. The source. Yes, the source.
Questions?
Here.
I may have missed this point, but how do you enforce privacy? How do you ensure privacy?
Privacy? Which kind of privacy?
Well, confidentiality. I mean, you talked about the privacy of the donations. Okay? So how do you enforce it? I mean, how do you ensure
the privacy of the donators? You can decide when you are making a donation if you want to log in the platform. So if you log in the platform, we know who you are, and this is useful if you want to make tax deduction or you want to show off in the top donors. While if you want to maintain distance between your name and your money, you just don't access, don't log in, ask for an anonymous donation, and you use a QR code that pop up, and that's it.
How many users do you have on the platform?
There are probably 7, 8 organizations that have subscribed in these weeks. There is Legambiente, World Arctic Found, some Chinese WWF, Croce Rossine.
Scusa, non volevo dare la privacy nessuno.
and as a user, probably 30, something like that, because it was just private beta. Up to now are entered only the people that we give the token. From tomorrow, I hope that this number grow fast. And oh, sorry, important things. We are concentrated in natural disaster because we want to develop this part, but each kind of organization can subscribe. Blockchain Edu just subscribed some days ago. Every kind of organization that have a social aim can subscribe to the platform and use the platform as a crowdfunding for any kind of positive crowdfunding.
ICO.
ICO are not allowed.
No. Last questions?
Guido, I want to see credit, please.
Okay, thank you.
Oops, sorry. Okay. Ooh, make it to the answer. Okay. It's almost time for the moment you are waiting for. So please welcome the real great Stephen Wright.
So, as of course you all know, I mean, Craig Wright invented Bitcoin. You know, he's Satoshi Nakamoto. But, you know, I kind of did this talk though, like something kind of annoyed because we have this pretender, Craig Wright, who's been going around and trying to go say that he is Craig Wright. And I'm sure we can all guess who he is. Let's face it, like, would the real Craig Wright / Satoshi Nakamoto be wasting time writing equations on glass? Of course not. You know, obviously that's some press photography. The equations probably aren't real. I mean, if I were to do it, I'd probably go write some love poetry or something, you know, just to mix things up a bit. So, he's not real, obviously.
Yeah.
And I will say that is completely real, real PHP signed statements and all. I, as it says, am Craig Wright, aka Satoshi Nakamoto. Very simple. Of course, if any of you guys are XKCD fans, you will know it's not just enough to just look at where it says PGP. I mean, you got to actually go verify it, right? Standard misconception, just look at an email, it says PGP verified, that should be enough. Well, I can also tell you, this is entirely real. Actually done on a computer earlier today, signed by me. And, as you can see, Craig Stephen Wright, aka Satoshi Nakamoto. Of course, if you know a little bit of Craig Wright's history, he did a few things that kind of discredit him. Craig Wright Dundee, of course, Australian weirdo who's on the run from the tax authorities. And, one of the things he did, of course, was to go and lift the signature from an early Bitcoin block and just copy and paste it. Kind of like, say, taking the Declaration of Independence and photocopying it and putting a little signature of one of the presidents on your own document. Obviously, that's a fake. I mean, similarly, if you were to ask, say, Gregory Maxwell, PHP key that Craig Wright Dundee used was clearly backdated. And I feel a little bad for Greg using this quote because he does regret this a bit. I mean, first and foremost, the thing that discredited Craig Wright Dundee was that his PGP key, of course, wasn't the one actually on Bitcoin.org. He just created one probably on his computer. What Greg was saying here was just how Craig Wright completely screwed up and didn't even use the right settings. But again, I can assure you that my key uses the right settings for the date it came from, and also, like it says, it's all signed and stuff. But the most convincing thing, though, would be to be able to show that it wasn't backdated. It was actually created when it was claimed to. So that in addition, of course, to trusting Mir here, when she says, I really did run all these commands, you'd be able to go verify that. In this, we call it timestamp proof. Proof that a message M existed prior to a time T. And if I can go show that my PGP key existed in the past, well, for all this kerfluffle about Craig Wright Dundee and all, obviously that'd be pretty convincing, right? That I was the right Craig Wright, aka Satoshi Nakamoto. And as we clearly showed, I mean, I have a timestamp on this. It shows that that key exists in the past, and we're all good, right? Well, I mean, this audience, I think you're going to ask, what does this really prove? Well, it's quite simple. Even Satoshi Nakamoto doesn't have a time machine. Yes, I invented Bitcoin, but I can't just go in the past. So if I can really prove this, then I can't respond to Craig Wright Dundee creating fake proof. I mean, what's the probability that I would have just generated a key with all this stuff, right? Obviously, I must be the real Craig Wright then. And if we're going to actually do this for real, well, first of all, I mean, let's face it, we can't really create a math equation that proves anything with time directly. But what we can do is do something called a commitment operation. And the idea with this is, rather than proving that a message existed prior to a time t, we prove that a message existed prior to another message. All right, so we have one message, and we know it existed before another message. And of course, if we can chain this stuff, we can go from one message to another message to another message, so on. And you'll see that in a second. But let's just get this in our heads. Well, what is the commitment operation? M1 existed prior to M2. Well, what's the simplest possible commitment operation you can imagine? Now, more technical people might yell at a hash function, but actually, it's this. Prepend and append. I take X, and I just put hello prior to it, or maybe world after it, or whatever. Point is, I take one thing, I add something to it, and I spit out the result. And there's an example. And I think we can all agree, if I were to change the world part of this, the output, hello world, would change. right? So that output committed to the input. If the input changes, the output must change. If the output changes, well, it doesn't match what the input was. You know, output has committed to the input. And yes, hash functions are like this too. Now as for why, well, we call this the random oracle model. And as you can see here, if I take hello world and I hash it with SHA-56, the number I get is so big it doesn't even fit on the screen. You know, and the model of cryptography is used for that, as we say, imagine we had like a random oracle in the sky, and we can submit to that oracle any message. Maybe the message, hello world in this case. The point is, the random oracle picks a number between 0 and, in this case, to the 256, and it gives us back that number, with the key thing being, for the same message, we always get the same number. Since it's randomly picked, well, how are you going to go pick two messages that have the same number? I mean, you got to keep trying over and over again until they match. And as it turns out, on average, you got to try 2 to the 128 times. That's a very, very big number. It also doesn't fit on the screen. And this isn't going to happen by chance. I mean, this isn't even going to happen if you try. Bitcoin is essentially trying to do this. You know, every Bitcoin block is trying to make the hash collision. Bitcoin can do like 64 bits. Doing 128 bits is just not going to happen. Therefore, it's a valid commitment operation. You know, as long as the math doesn't get broken, we know that whatever that output was, whatever, you know, 7F8, whatever, if you have that, I've committed to the input securely. And then finally, the last bit of the puzzle is, well, if I can chain a set of commitment operations,
This one, maybe.
this works good. Much better. Now I feel like a proper Craig Wright. Now, if we can go chain a bunch of these commitment operations, remember, M1 prior to M2, M2 prior to M3, well, the very last step, that's when we can go say, let's go and add the real world to this. Let's tie this back to time. Because again, I mean, a math equation can't directly represent time, but maybe something in the newspaper can. And this is a competing service to open timestamps called guard time. And apparently they actually go and get advertisements in newspapers and will actually publish the hash that commits to a whole bunch of other hashes in a newspaper. Now, I've given other talks along these lines where I'll go into say, the calendars and so on, but suffice to say, there's a lot of Merkle trees involved. And this would be a Merkle tree of a couple million different things. Open timestamps is basically the same thing, only rather than newspapers, we use the Bitcoin blockchain. And this is an example of an open timestamps proof actually running. OTS verify a digest. That digest is, of course, that PGP fingerprint that I showed you before proving I'm Craig Wright. CW.OTS is just a proof file, and it goes and asks my local Bitcoin node, you know, do you have a certain Bitcoin block? And the Bitcoin node says, yes, I do. And it checks all the math and so on, and says, yes, Bitcoin attests that key, that Craig Wright key, which I just used to prove I am Craig Wright, existed as of April 23rd, 2013. So right there, I mean, I think I proved it. Of course, you guys are skeptical, as you should be. So you're probably going to ask, how did that work? Well, let's go to the culmination of all this. That's an open timestamps proof. I mean, that is literally the command. This time with info thing, which just dumps the raw data structure of it. And up at the top, we have file, right, MD hash. Well, that's 168 bits of my PGP fingerprint. And the rest of the timestamp file is just a set of math instructions. And they're all commitment operations. Up at the top, prepend a big long thing, append a big long thing. That actually happens to be a Bitcoin transaction. SHA-56 it over and over again, prepend different parts of Merkle tree, and so on. And the interesting thing is, I mean, the verifier doesn't need to know that this is actually a Bitcoin transaction. All it needs to know is these are all commitment operations. And if I sat down with one of you guys on pen and paper, well, plus a nice calculator, we could go through this and say every step, the input to it, was committed by the output. And every one of those lines is one of these parts of the math proof. And like any math proof, I mean, it can be a little hard to convince yourself this really works, but remember, if at any of these steps I change something, then the last step, right here, verify Bitcoin block header attestation, 232,758. That's just saying, after all these math steps, the output should be a Bitcoin block. You know, it should be, to be exact, the Merkle root of that Bitcoin block. Remember what a commitment operation was. If the input changes, output changes. So if any of those steps, the input changed, at the last step, it would have said, hang on, that Bitcoin block was not the same one as input. And, well, block 232, I mean, that was quite old, 2013. Again, let's go back to our threat model. I am pretending to be Craig Wright. Well, how would I have known to do this back in 2013? I mean, Craig Wright was, Craig Wright wasn't even a public figure back then. And, like I've said before, and Mir will attest to it, those are real commands run on a real computer. So, obviously, this is all correct. Thus, I think you can all agree I'm definitely Craig Wright. Do I have agreement? You guys sound like you've seen a few scammers. Well, I'll give you one last little slide, which is I also ran that command on another virtual machine on my Cubes OS, and it gave that result too, which is also a completely legit result, and yes, that is real. And maybe some people know a little more about PHP, might be thinking about what was actually going on there. But with that, let's get some questions.
So, before opening space to the question, I would like to tell you the only question you cannot ask. So, since now we know for certain that Craig Wright MD is Satoshi Nakamoto and that Peter is Craig Wright MD, you cannot ask who is really Peter Todd. He's here, he's among us, but nobody will reveal you who he is. Any other kind of question you can ask? A question like, I didn't understand anything is also right. I mean, we just start again.
It's not a question.
You have a question.
Okay. Is there proof that your key produces exactly that fingerprint? Is there a proof, or we have to trust it?
Well, like I said, I can assure you, every command I ran honestly. It did what you'd expect it to. It really did prove that fingerprints existed in the past. And I will say, someone actually went through the PGP Book of Trust, and they went through and got a copy of every single PGP key and took all the fingerprints of them and went off and timestamped them. It wasn't actually done with open timestamps, it was actually done with another mechanism, but because open timestamps is generic, the verifier doesn't know how the proof was created. It doesn't know if you just put something in op return or paid to paid a public key hash or anything. All it knows is that there's a set of math instructions. Every math instruction is valid, and if you follow them with valid math instructions, you have a valid math proof. Therefore, you know when this data must have existed prior to. So I was able to go take that non-open timestamp and quite easily actually extract it and then create an open timestamps proof with it. To get a little technical, the way I did this was open timestamps library has a function that does all this for you, and you just tell it, I think Bitcoin block whatever has this digest, figure out how to extract a proof from it. And the server, the normal way you use open timestamps does this automatically. I just use it in different contexts. So a bit of manual work, but really quite easy, about 5 minutes of work. Of course, again, you should ask, what exactly is a PHP fingerprint?
I don't trust you. I want to verify where are the slides, where are the data. Can I verify it by myself?
Well, you know, this particular Craig Wright, I don't like people getting scammed, so I'm happy to give you everything, but the one bit of PGP thing that actually puts the name Craig Wright to that key. But I can show you upstairs, it really is real. And I'm glad you're just so enthusiastic about verification. I did go try to do this in a slightly different way with an expired key, but sadly, turns out not that many people lose their PGP keys.
So do you have a $20,000 note, or are you going to piss off?
Well, so my thinking on this is, you know, the value of a node is the tack it prevents. So if I have $20,000 worth of Bitcoin and my node prevents me from accidentally accepting some Bcash, to me that node was worth $20,000. So really, all of us have $20,000 nodes because we can all go verify for ourselves. And of course, we all are rich after all. So right there, that's all $20,000 nodes. And as for this pretender Craig Wright, I mean, that's kind of an elitist way of looking at things. I mean, do you really want a system where like people are trusting others? It'd be almost like what we are seeing today.
So let's take a poll. How many of you are now convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that Peter Todd is the real Craig Wright? Raise your hand. Okay, not bad, not bad.
Yeah, 1%. You know, the great thing is 1% is more than enough to make a living scamming people. Like, could those 1%ers just stand in maybe a corner there, and I'll just come by later and ask you where your wallets are?
So everybody who is convinced can donate, of course, to his company, P-Chain.
Also, how many are in doubt? Because also the one in doubt can be scammed.
Yeah, if you only have doubt, like I could totally turn you into a believer. I mean, maybe I could get a shrink-wrapped computer and run the commands again. Because, of course, nobody outside of the manufacturer could have access to a shrink-wrap machine. I hear that was Gavin Andresen's story as to how he got fooled into believing the pretender Craig Wright.
So now also a disclaimer. First the question, how many journalists are in this room? So if a journalist is watching, also maybe the live stream, please, this is not true. This proof was better than the proof of Craig Wright. Of course, it was technically more sound, but still do not write everywhere that he is Craig Wright.
So I've got a serious question. How many of you have actually used PGP? How many of you have ever used PGP and changed your UID?
ID.
Yeah, your UID. Like say add a new email address.
No, not change that. Add it.
Quite simply, you can do this without changing your fingerprint.
Yeah. Yes.
You probably have a bit of a clue how it's done. It's very simple. It's that in PGP, you see, what I showed you there, that, where are we here? The fingerprint at the beginning. Yeah, this thing. See how it says using RSA key? That literally is just the hash of an RSA key, plus a date. It is not the other part that says Craig Wright. So in fact, what we had here was a lack of a commitment operation. Because essentially, that thing signs Craig Wright, and the signing is then another, what is that, like link of trust, if you will. Essentially you have fingerprint, it signs something else, then that thing signs another thing, but doesn't commit to it. And because it doesn't commit to it, well, I can replace it. You can replace it with something else. I can always add another signature. That's really all there is to it in this. You just have one little break of the trust and the whole thing falls down. And it's quite interesting because back when the person actually did this and did go timestamp all these PHP keys, it took a few days for someone to point out, hey, this is actually broken. And something I'd actually like to go do in the future is go fix this issue. Where I'm working on some things called DEX, for example, determinist expressions, where really we'd like to go through and rewrite PGP so that that link in the chain is actually timestamped. You know, we do have full control over who is actually signing what. So hopefully in the future, this won't be an issue, but it's been around for like probably 25 years now, this bad design, and it'll take a while.
Wow. So let me see if I understand. Your fingerprint was committing to a Craig Wright signature that was time-stamped, but your fingerprint itself was not time-stamped, so you basically created it now and committed it to something that was existing before.
Exactly the opposite of what you said.
Yeah.
So the fingerprint's time-stamped, but the fingerprint doesn't commit to the Craig Wright. The link between the fingerprint and Craig Wright's RSA signature, and because it's just a signature, you can go sign it again. And essentially, if you've used PGP, I mean, if you use GNU PG, the command is edit key, add UID. So all I did was upstairs just go add the UUID, being Craig Wright, and go from there. Now, the interesting thing with PGP is the Web of Trust does attest to particular UIDs. So if you sign someone else's key, you're not actually signing the key. You're signing a particular UID associated with the key. Yeah. Okay. Which actually was an source of exploits in the past where keys didn't actually sign UIDs. It used to be the other way around. Okay. And people could also still swap up UIDs even in the Web of Trust, but yeah, they fixed that maybe 15 years ago.
Okay, so now you reveal the trick for this public presentation, but just before, your assistant took a laptop and you actually signed with the key of the first Genesis block or something like that. So how could that be possible? Where's the trick there? I mean, I really seen it happen. I was ready to vouch for you in public.
Do you really trust computers?
Oh.
I mean, how do you actually know what that thing is doing under the hood? And as an example, I mean, we recently had Intel admit that basically every single Intel computer shipped in the past 15 years has backdoors in it.
Oh, wow.
Where someone over, say, an Ethernet connection can just trivially hack into the computer and install rootkit isn't even the right word, it's beyond root. It's more root than root. But you can install essentially exploits that are at a higher level in your operating system and therefore can make the computer do anything it wants. You know, the way an Intel computer works is you have essentially user, operating system, hypervisor, hypervisor. Even bigger than that, I'm out of hypers. And that's the level Intel had an exploit in, all the way up to the top. And this thing can change what this does, and that can change what that does.
Craig Wright.
Yes, Intel could even backdoor Craig Wright. And essentially, I mean, it's quite simple. Like, if I get to go and have access to the hardware from the beginning, I can go and make it do anything I want, including modify the operation of programs. You know, you might think you're running one thing, like verify that signature, when in reality, the code you're really running is my code faking a signature. So essentially, you should have brought your own hardware. And not only that, you can't even bring your own hardware with, say, the Wi-Fi line. Because the moment your hardware touches my hardware, be it wirelessly or electrically, I can exploit your system. And it's game over at that point.
So whenever somebody wants to prove you that he's the real Peter Todd, you should have your own hardware, maybe purchased for the purpose, and your own trusted Wi-Fi at least. So now I stop asking stupid questions and ask a real question. If somebody here is not technical enough in order to actually try to verify what just happened tonight with your fake proof, and what's the, in your opinion, the best intellectual position to hold? I mean, if someone in this room cannot verify this because lacks the technical capability, what do? You just believe nothing of what you read on the newspaper?
I mean, the only good answer I have to this stuff is like journalism, which really comes down to all these systems assume that they're sufficiently verifiable, that some people will verify, and when they verify and the verification doesn't work, they're going to loudly yell on Reddit and Twitter, and pretty soon journalists are going to pick up on this and you'll hear about it in the media. I mean, this is why the Craig Wright story, all right, the BBC, I think it was The Economist, and some men's magazine went and reported it as, I don't know, maybe this guy's Craig Wright, and within a few minutes, a bunch of other people said, no, this is really stupid, you completely screwed this up. And really what that should have told random people on the street is, yeah, sounds like a whole bunch of people don't think this guy's really Craig Wright, he's probably lying. Wish I had a better answer than that, but that's really the best you do with a lot of this stuff, unless you want to learn how open timestamps works and how PGP works. Another thing to worry about this is, I gave a simple scam. You know, I gave it a deliberately easy to understand scam. I mean, I could have always given you a more complex scam.
And nobody really understood it, including people working on open test times along with Peter.
Well, I mean, I could have kept on amping up the scam complexity until you don't really. Well, I mean, a big part of this is you can amp up the scam complexity until experts just give up verifying, because it's just too complex to actually figure out truly is this real or not. Which really gets down to, well, one way to do a scam is exhaust peer review. So for end users, I think a decent question to ask is, does this look simple enough that the peer reviewers have kept up? And I think a good litmus test for a lot of this stuff is, do I kind of understand it? I mean, I think probably a good chunk of the audience were sort of following along. Well, that's a sign that maybe other people in the audience could have said, hey, this is a big scam. Whereas if none of you were following along, that should really worry you, because it's probably a sign that I'd get away with the scam.
So since we're talking about scams, this is probably a good moment to paraphrase Vitalik Buterin. Well, he was right when he said basically, if you have a very simple way to prove something and you deliberately choose a very complex way to prove it, then it's very likely that you're lying. And I mean, this can also be very meta, but it's actually true.
I mean, Vitalik would know best. He was involved in the quantum computing scam.
So, now, how is the percentage? Is it the same? Did it work? Is the percentage drop a little bit? Yeah, great. Mission accomplished. Other questions?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.